All right, let's talk about the NBA, and specifically the drama that we saw, kind of a media and NBA story, I guess. The drama we saw last week between Stephen A. Smith and LeBron James. Late in the Lakers' home game last week, LeBron approached Stephen A. Smith, of course, with ESPN, who was sitting courtside, and had some choice words for Smith over some of the comments that Stephen A. has made about his son, Bronny. I want to play a clip of what Stephen A. said a few months ago about Bronny James.
I am pleading with LeBron James as a father. Stop this. Stop this. We all know that Bronny James is in the NBA because of his dad. We love what we're seeing from him in the G League because that's where you belong. As you hone your skills and you get better and you legitimately earn, which I believe he has the potential to do, I am rooting for Bronny James. It would be cruel to root against him. He's a wonderful kid. I wish him nothing but the best. But he's LeBron James' son. And everybody knows what attention that brings.
All right, so Rachel, let's start here. By approaching a high-profile media personality like that
during a game,
is LeBron doing his son any real favors in that moment?
I'm not sure that we're at a stage with the Bronny situation where that is going to be the thing that makes the difference, right? I mean, he was drafted by the Lakers. He plays home games with both the Lakers and the G League. I mean, that to me is the thing that doesn't do him any favors, right? Because it just sort of underlines his special status. This, I don't think it affects the Bronny conversation. It's more about the LeBron Stephen A conversation. And it's funny, the clip you played, I remember when Stephen A said that, and I didn't really understand it at the time. I don't know if Stephen A was trying to say that, like, as a father, you should be more protective or looking out for your son more.
It was kind of a bit to me. Like, I'm asking you, I'm pleading with you as a dad.
Right, but
it was kind of a bit.
But that doesn't make any sense,
no, it doesn't.
Right? So
he's basically saying Bronny's bad. Stop letting him play basketball is what he's saying in a, very soap operatic way.
I mean, look, I have said many times, you are never going to pay LeBron James enough money for what he has done for the league, right? And for how long he's played and how popular he's been. His son is obviously a passable basketball player. He's doing very well in the G League, or doing well, I guess, in the G League. And in the NBA, he's playing 4 minutes a game, and he's averaging 1.5 points in 4 minutes. Now, his shooting percentages are not good.
Yeah.
But to pretend the 12th guy at the end of the bench on any of these teams, they're taking a job away from someone. I mean, it's very dramatic. And if LeBron James wants to play with his son, and his son is not, me level of a basketball player, he's a G League level player. I mean, he's not off the street. And that I don't see anything wrong with it. And I would never, quote, make that plea. And I didn't even understand that plea at the time because it didn't make sense to me. I think LeBron maybe, I don't know if he regrets handling it during a game, or maybe he doesn't. Dwayne Wade came out and said he would have done the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's kind of become like everyone's sort of taking sides,
yeah.
Lining up. I know Stephen A was on Gilbert's podcast expanding on his thoughts, sort of doubling down on his criticism. Look, I think any criticism of Bronny James is legitimate. Like, he is an NBA player. He is a professional. Like, you are allowed to be criticized. And, LeBron put him in this position. Look, I think, and I spent a lot of time around USC last year, watching as many games as I could of Bronny James to see how he was going to develop. I do believe that if LeBron kind of just backed all the way off and Rich Paul backed all the way off, that somebody would have drafted Bronny in the second round. I do think it's not like you're talking about a non-talent.
That's what I mean.
He had a heart attack less than 2 years ago,
right,
that required a slow ramp up to get back into a game. So there is a talent there. And I do think that somebody in that second round would have taken a flyer on him. But the reality is Rich Paul got involved and was basically warning teams, what Bob Myers said, not to draft Bronny. And look, they got what they wanted because they got Bronny playing with LeBron, and they got him the kind of deal that he never would have gotten otherwise.
Absolutely.
Like, if Bronny James had been drafted by the Dallas Mavericks, they would have given him
They
a
would have
two-way
traded him to
contract
the
or
Lakers.
something. Yeah, all right. But if they were going to sign him, and if they wanted to develop him, look, I think I've said this before. Like, Boston almost drafted him. Boston was strongly considering just saying, you know what, screw it, let's draft him. Let's see, let the chips fall where they may. ultimately decided not to do it. But any team that did draft him was going to offer some kind of two-way contract and dare him to go play overseas. So I think that there's an accountability there that LeBron has to have for putting Bronny in this position. But look, you hosted a 5-day-a-week show on ESPN. You are one of the most visible basketball people out there right now. Like, what is the way to handle that? What's the
if you're Stephen A. or if
you're both, right? Like Stephen A. has been insistent that LeBron should have come to him and he would have flown out to LA and they would have had a heart-to-heart and it never would have become public. I'm a little skeptical of that, but I think ultimately it always becomes public.
Yes.
But what's the right way to handle a situation like that?
I mean, I certainly think that LeBron does know how to do all of that privately.
Yeah.
He made a decision to do it publicly, maybe, and I'm speculating, but maybe because the criticism was public and he felt like a public rebuke was appropriate.
So you think he was looking for that? It was not during the game, it was during a timeout, but of course he knows that camera phones are rolling at all times. He knows that somebody's going to catch it. You think do you think the intent was to do exactly what he did?
I think it wasn't an accident. I wouldn't go far as that he was scheming about it, but I don't think it was sort of like without thought.
Yeah.
So I think that, look, when I worked for the Washington Post for the beginning of my career, and I had a great sports editor, George Salomon, and one of the things he taught me right away when I was 21 years old was, if you criticize someone, you have to show up the next day. You have to
Jackie
give
McMullen
them,
taught me that lesson. Way back in the day. It always stuck with me too. Like, if you write something negative about a person, show up the next day.
Yeah, don't go hide.
It more applies to beat writing.
It does.
Nowadays the media has totally changed. But yes, I agree with that.
Right? So, look, Stephen A. is in LA all the time, and there's an argument that he doesn't need LeBron to call him to have that conversation, and he doesn't need LeBron to ask him to fly across the country. Stephen A. often works out of the studio literally across from Staples Center. Right. He could have walked across any of those nights and faced LeBron James.
And sometimes he does. I mean, I see him there. Yeah.
Right, but he clearly hasn't been going into the Lakers locker room because if he had, then that confrontation would have happened not with a bunch of fans and cell phone cameras. So, look, that is how I would have handled it because that's what I was just taught from an early age, and so as to you. But, Stephen A.'s business is creating controversies, and he's gotten obscenely rich over creating controversies. You cannot say it has not been a winning formula for him. So to kind of, on his side, I don't know if it was intentional, but not accidental, right? The idea that this is what he courts, and that he could have handled it in a different way and instead waited for something to be public or not at all. That I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of underlying motives here.
Where does Bronny shake out in all this? Because to me, he kind of becomes collateral damage. Like, we haven't been talking about Bronny James for a couple of months now. Like, he's been the only time I think about Bronny these days is when I see the tweet from the Lakers account that they are bringing him up and setting him down. Bringing him up and setting him down.
If you're on the Lakers have a PR communications channel that's open only to the media, and we get their status updates, right? And it is literally every day that, every other day, every 3 days, Bronny's going to the South Bay Lakers. Bronny's coming back up to the Lakers. I mean, it's funny to hear the trends and see the transactions. I happen to think that Bronny is a great kid. I have known him since he was a baby. He has grown up in an almost impossible environment, being LeBron James' son and wanting to play basketball. It did not work out very well for Michael Jordan's sons. And
for many sons.
Yes, well, absolutely.
Go down the list, yeah.
Well, just for someone that famous and that good and that accomplished, that I think he's turned out great. Not even just considering. He's a great teammate. Everyone who plays with him says that he's not too big for his britches, that he's willing to do the work, all of that stuff. He's humble when he speaks in the press and the public. I know there are people who will always be mad that he's playing as an extension of being mad at the power LeBron James wields because Bronny has become a symbol of that power. But if you're not one of those people, I don't think you can criticize the kid as a person, or even maybe, you can say, oh, he doesn't belong getting these NBA shots. But as you say, he's not off the street. He is a basketball player. And I don't think this incident changes a lot of minds about Bronny. I think the people who were pro him getting a shot and even pro, hey, LeBron deserves to have this one, feel that way still. And the people who have always hated it will continue to hate it.
And look, I don't want to minimize the player that Bronny is, because I do think he's an actual player. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think he's just some, he's not LeBron's kid. He's not just there
Right.
because he's LeBron's kid. He's not just in the NBA because he's LeBron's kid. But this is the new perk for NBA players, for star athletes. Like, Thanasis Antetokounmpo
Yep.
made a good amount of money
Yep.
and won a championship
Yep.
on the bench
Yep.
supporting his brother Giannis. If 10 years from now, Jason Tatum is still on the Celtics and Deuce turns out to be a good player, the Celtics will probably find a way to get Deuce involved with the team. It's it's just the new thing.
I'm not sure that timing quite lines up, but
Maybe. How old is he? 7? I don't know.
I was going to say he's eternally 5 years old, but no, he's probably 6 or 7 by now.
He might be right there. He could be in that mix. LeBron's 40. He's still playing at a ridiculous level.
But yeah, look, again, the Bucks wanted to keep Giannis happy because what's more valuable than that to them?
Yeah.
Otherwise, he leaves if he's unhappy. So it's worth it. And that's the thing you have to sort of include in this discussion is when the franchise makes decisions, they're making decisions of what's in the best interest of the franchise. They're not making decisions of, is this fair on a global league level?
Right.
Is this something that other players should get a chance at and we're preventing that? They don't care about any of that stuff. They want the franchise to advance and they want their best player to want to stay there when they have opportunities to leave, which both Giannis and LeBron have had. And if they decide that their son or brother being there is what's going to do it and it's going to help their franchise, they have every right to do that. If they decide pulling up a giant ice cream truck at Giannis's house every day will convince him to stay with the Bucks, they're going to do that too. So I just think that we look at it in a different way than the teams look at it.
So we're talking about Bronny here, but the Lakers, tough timing for them with this latest LeBron injury, which is a bigger story right now for Los Angeles. I mean, they were playing some phenomenal basketball. They had a very competitive game against the Celtics last week, national TV. And then they lose LeBron in the fourth quarter of that game. They go out 2 nights later and lose to the Brooklyn Nets, which is tough to do, so the Nets don't really want to win.
No.
They have got a pretty
Everybody
tough
lost
schedule.
in that game.
I know. Everybody lost in that game. Sean Marks up there. What do I got to do? How many guys do I got to trade to make something like this happen?
Exactly.
But now here you are with the Lakers. They slip out of that number 2 seed. You're sitting there at number 3. But they're only 4 games up, I think, on whoever's in the 6th seed right now. And I think only 4.5 games up on whoever's in the 7. So, they're in that kind of danger zone right now, as well as they've played over the last 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
And as great as the defense have been, I'm not sure how long they can survive a LeBron injury. Like this injury, LeBron kind of downplayed it. The reporting is it's basically week to week at this point. But they've got a tough end to this road trip. Where are they? I know Denver's on this trip.
They have the 4th hardest schedule remaining games.
Yeah.
4th hardest in the league. Look, I mean,
Milwaukee, Denver's how they close this out. Yeah, that's right.
I think the idea that if they fall in the standings, things are harder for them is a little bit strange, only that if they stay in the 3 seed, they face the red-hot 12-1 Warriors if they stay where they are. So I just don't know if you can predict matchups in a conference where everything is just so crazy close, besides Oklahoma City, of course.
Really just avoid play-in, I think, is the big thing.
I think absolutely. Look, there's an unintended consequence of this, as Adam Silver likes to say. LeBron resting for 2 or plus weeks before a playoff push is very advantageous in the long run. Obviously, I do not think any of this was on purpose to get him rest. I just think that it is a side note to all of this. He needed a rest break after playing through the summer in the Olympics and the beginning of the season. He took one, right? And his numbers were not good going into that, and obviously much, much better and elite since then. I definitely had some concerns of, is there a point he's going to run out of gas in the playoffs? And now that's not really going to be a concern anymore. So again, I'm sure the Lakers would prefer he's not injured. I'm sure LeBron would prefer he's not injured, but there could be a long-term bright side silver lining to this. And then also, look, they laid an egg in Brooklyn. And the thing that was a little bit disturbing to me is we saw Luka return to the persona a little bit, arguing with officials. He got a tech. That's number 9 for anyone counting. Starting at 16, you start missing games every other technical, as you may remember from one Green, Draymond. And that, that's the thing that they need to prevent. They need to get Luka playing like he plays with LeBron when he's without LeBron. But come on, there were plenty of games in Dallas Kyrie didn't play. So the idea that Luka Doncic suddenly can't win basketball games if he's the only elite player on the floor for his team is a little ridiculous.
A little, yes, I agree with that. It is different in that if Kyrie goes out, they still have a team in Dallas that they have spent 7 years building around him, right? Like you have rim runners and Lively and Gafford, Flores, guys that are comfortable in Luka's orbit there. They're not quite there yet with the Lakers. But I do agree with you that seeding maybe doesn't really matter all that much. Like you do want to find a way to avoid either Oklahoma City or Denver in the first round. I think that's
especially although hey, the Lakers beat Denver last time around. Maybe they could, chase away some demons. I don't know.
They got to play through Denver. Maybe Denver's on this road trip too. Like I know they have one more game.
I think they do have a game against.
I think Denver's going to be up for that one.
Oh, I believe so. Michael Malone.
Yeah, with or without LeBron.
Playing daddy.
Yeah, with or without LeBron in that one, Denver's going to be up for that. But I think, look, if they wind up at 6 and have to play Memphis, Houston, I don't know, Clippers, or whoever.
Is that worse than playing the Warriors in the first round?
God, no. I wouldn't want to play Golden State, this version of them, in the first round either.
That's what I mean. I don't think falling in the standings is necessarily bad for them. Again, unintended consequence could end up being better for them long term. So we'll see.